Let's give a warm round of welcome to Team Holmes.
Thank you, everyone. This is weird seeing so many gaps between the seats, but we've almost got a full room. So
absolutely, absolutely. So
yeah, don't forget the L is really important because I'm not in real estate. Just so you know.
Okay, Team Holmes. Right. Great. So, Tim, let's start just a little background. Your background. You were born in the UK, right? Tell us a little bit about that and your coming to SA.
So yes, born and bred in the UK. Didn't even know South Africa existed. Went to a boarding school, went to a prep school, went to university in London, did the typical English thing, but got into IT quite quickly. And I was actually thinking about, have I ever been involved in startups? And I realized practically every job I've had bar one, I've started with me and one other person. So I guess that's technically pretty close to a startup. So got into IT and then have basically stayed in IT and asset management software for the last 27 years until 2013. But whilst I was at the UK, we used to be able to travel, and you went on holiday jobs. So I was doing a naval architecture degree and got a holiday job on a cruise ship, which happens to come to South Africa, called the RMS St. Helena. And I was in Cape Town on a typical screaming southeaster, whatever it was, August day, freezing cold, pouring with rain, and I absolutely fell in love with this place. So I was here for 3 days, saw the mountain with clear skies as we were leaving, and at some point in that conversation with myself decided at whatever I was, 19, 20 years old, I have to find a way of coming back here. I have to find a way. Along the way, met various South Africans. We ended up with a South African lodger when I bought a house with my sister, and over a period of 7 years, built up, got my degree, paid off my student loans, got some job experience, and then eventually got to a position where I ended up working for a software company that opened an office in Joburg. Yes! So I got myself on the list and got sent to Johannesburg and met the other employee. See, number 2. So yeah, I've been in South Africa since 1992, not planning to leave anytime soon. My brother-in-law, who's born and bred in South Africa, went to the UK, and he's been there for 5 years, and I spoke to him last month, and he said, now I know why you left, because he's been through 3 winters and doesn't want any more. So yes, I'm not going anywhere. Was in Joburg for a while, then eventually found a way to get back to Cape Town. And I think of it as coming back to Cape Town, because it just took a long time to arrive and then leave and come back. So I've been in Cape Town since '94, various jobs. I bought a video shop at one point. Don't do that just before Netflix and everyone else decides to sell videos online. I've been involved with FinSwitch, so that's where I met, what's his name? Sandras, yes. So it's been a journey of arriving in South Africa with with a managing director. We had to build the software business in South Africa. Eventually got to the point where we had the likes of Old Mutual, Sanlam, various other companies using our platform, and built that business to a point where I was the branch manager and based in Cape Town and building a business. But I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to do the software development stuff anymore. I didn't want to be a consultant anymore. I wanted to be a business coach. But so what do? You do an MBA. Everyone does an MBA because you have no idea what you want to do next. Finished the MBA, realized I don't know anything like enough to be a business anything. I need to get an MD position. So that's when I joined FinSwitch. And I walked in the door and I had 1 employee again, but this time I was the MD. So we went from 2,000 transactions a year to now they're over 1 million a month. So this little engine, this little team of 8 people, never grew more than 8 people. We built the data switch. So if you buy and sell unit trusts, if you ever owned a unit trust or invested in a unit trust, it goes through FinSwitch. So that little platform of 8 people, we were outsourcing stuff and putting stuff online and cloud computing from 2001 on 2002 onwards. So that was a hell of a journey, but I'm not the kind of person who enjoys working in a space which is all about risk and mitigating risk and processes and all this stuff. I'm in the contribution compass world, highly activating. I need new experience. I need to meet new people. I need new stuff. So I left and joined FinSwitch. I mean, Sirdar.
Yeah. And I remember that time when we were both frustrated because we think, we could grow this and make it really big. And then the industry is like, oh, you're doing very well. What else do you want?
No. So I resigned and gave them a year's notice because the board said, no, we're not going to do that project. And it was the only one left on my list. So I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. Cheers. I don't know when. I don't know. I'm going to give you a year's notice. I don't know exactly when I'm going to leave. I have no clue what I'm doing next. But I'm telling you now, I can't do this anymore. And found Sirdar, and they'd been working with us as a board through that period. So a bit of a backstory. FinSwitch, when I started, we had myself and one employee, as I said, who was the clerk, effectively, who handled the phone calls. We had 12 directors.
More directors than employees.
Startups can have directors. You can have too many directors. We had way too many directors. But all the shareholders were big institutions in South Africa, so they wanted to put someone on the board to make sure we weren't doing something that was going to benefit someone else. So from day one, it was like, what on earth are you supposed to use this thing called a board for? What is the difference between a shareholder and a director? Because my whole board is shareholders. I'm the only poor little idiot who's not a shareholder and has been thrown into this space. So did lots of training, did all of the Institute Director courses, found Carl Bates, who's now a business partner, along the way, was just doing any course I could find about what do I do with these 12 really intelligent, really experienced, really useful people, because in my world, they're not helping. I'm having a meeting twice a year, and I'm giving them a report back. They're signing the check for the next 6 months of funding, and that was it. So it's critical to understand, however small you are, which is what I want to try and get across today if we can, if we have time, however small you are, work out what this structure, this thing looks like called a business. Because it'll make a massive difference as you start to get to the point where you've got some momentum and you start to grow.
Tell us about that now. What would be the structures, like the different hats that around the shareholders, the board, the management? Tell us how that should work and how businesses in here should start thinking about that or implement that.
So the big thing is to get over yourself. Ego is a killer of businesses of note. Work out first and foremost, is the business about you? If it is about you, then you are going in the direction of it's about you always. Do that. Do it properly. Be the figurehead. Be the person who's the master craftsman or master craftswoman. Be the best you can possibly be at that thing. Best in the world. Be the Oprah Winfrey. Whatever it is that's in your world, be that person. But realize that the business has no value or very little value because it's all about you. So earn as much as you can and put the money somewhere else. Unit trusts are good. I can vouch for them. They work. But invest somewhere else because that's what you will retire on. That's your legacy. Or it's a book or it's something else. But if it's about you, then do it properly. If it's not about you or you think it might not be about you, then make a decision, the first or second person you bring in, and start building a shit-hot team. You want to make sure that everyone you employ is better than you at what they do. Because otherwise you can't grow. Because you are the limiting factor. From day one, you are the limiting factor. So if you don't get out of the way as fast as possible in the stuff that you're not very good at, you are holding the business back. You are stopping it growing. And then there's the shareholder director bit. But if you haven't made that T-junction decision, I'm going to build a business all about me, which will be a small team. You're training people to help you, freeing up your time so you can do more what it is you do really well. Or you go in the enterprise space. Now you're leading people, you're training people, you're building people, you're employing people because you want to always be getting out of the way. That's an enterprise. That's a PTY Limited. That's a team. The other direction, you're a sole proprietor or you're just a consultant or whatever it is. You're a dentist, doctor, lawyer.
Yeah.
It's a one-man show.
In that case, you are the business.
Yeah. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Small businesses earn packets of money, but it's a particular type of business, and it has its limitations and it has its strengths. So make a decision.
And with that also, I think that's one of the questions that comes up all the time, that somebody says, can investors invest in me? And then find out actually you are the business, you are the sole proprietor, you are that. In that case, like, people can't buy equity
in you.
In you. Mm.
Yeah, so the other thing is you can't own a business. That was abolished. It was slavery and all that stuff. You legally can't. Literally, a business is a juristic person. So it's the language we use drives us in a particular direction. If we start saying to our friends, no, it's my business, and blah, 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 I own a business. You can't own a business. And what happens is you're in that mindset, you begin to believe that this laptop is my laptop. No, it's the company's laptop. This stage or this building or whatever is my building, and I can do whatever I like with it. No, it belongs to the business. So the business always comes first. So we get confused about where we're putting our money and which bank account, and we pull it out and put it in, and oh, it's got lots of money in the company account, I'm rich. No, you're not. The company's got some money, and it might be able to pay for the stuff it's got to buy next week or next month. It's not your money. Pay yourself a salary. So it's all in the words we use. It really is. It's amazing how the way we talk drives, what goes on in our head drives everything that we do. And business is no different. And the way you talk about your business is no different.
Brilliant. And how can somebody start, if they've decided that I want to be an enterprise, how do they now start to move what they are and what they do into, move it away from them, and so that they are not the business, they are not the ceiling? And that's one thing that a lot of founders struggle with, is that I can't find one person that I can hire who can do things as good as me. Tell us about it.
So the first thing to understand is we call it the law of three hats, because when you fill in the form and sign to build a business, to register a business, you have to put at least one shareholder down on the form, you have to put at least one director on the form, and let's face it, if you haven't got any management, you don't have a business. So you already have three hats in your business. Everybody says, I don't have a board. If you have filled in the PTY form, you have a board. You are it. You have all the responsibilities, all the legal requirements of a board. It doesn't matter whether it's 1, 2, 10, it's the same liability. So understand that difference. The other problem with small business is we don't think of ourselves as shareholders. So coming from an investment background, everybody knows that they buy a share on the JSE and they expect a return and they expect value to go up and blah, blah, blah. And then we walk out the door and we go into our own business and we do something completely different. We know, I'm just going to put everything in the business. It's going to grow in the business. We're never going to pay dividends. We're going to put it back in the business. That's fine, but what happens if the business doesn't grow? And you didn't take something out to pay a salary or a dividend or something down the line. It's also the mindset. If you're not paying anything in the terms of a shareholder, then are you really making a good investment? Because if someone else was investing, you want an investor to come into your business and you've never valued it, you've never put together or thought about what a dividend policy might look like, how on earth are they going to determine whether this business has any value? Because they're going to look at what am I going to get out of it. The value has grown. I've got a track record. The last 2 years has grown, and based on blah, blah, EBITDA and this and that and growth projections, etc. I've paid myself a dividend of 50% of the profit every time we've made a profit. Cool, this person is really thinking like an enterprise. They're not thinking like a job. So that's that transition. Craft is a job. Enterprise is a business. You are an employee of the business. You are a shareholder in the business. And you're a director in the business. They are all different. So shareholder gets a return. Make sure you get a return. Otherwise, put your money somewhere else. If you're a director, you need to think strategically. You need to be having a meeting to think strategically. Even if it's just on your own, put the time in your diary. I'm going to think about what is my strategy and direction? What is the culture of this business? Have I got the right leadership team? All of that stuff. And then think, what is my job role? Or the 20 roles, but write them all down. Draw the organogram. This is what an enterprise looks like in 5 years' time. I've got these 3 hats. Okay, take my name off, write down the description. COO does this, CEO does this, CFO does that. Which one do I not want to do? That one. Cool. Now you've got a job description and you've got a plan. So go find that person. And if you've got a big enough idea, if you've got a big enough promise to the market, someone else who's not very good at coming up with the ideas will latch on to this energy, latch on to your founder power, which is to take this business forward and go on the journey with you for surprisingly little often. I mean, Simon, your founders, how much, did you pay them R1 million a year in the first year? No, of course not. Sirdar's been doing this for 10 years. We go up and down, and sometimes we do well, sometimes we don't. That's the journey. But people stay in because this is bigger than me. I believe in this thing. I'm making a difference. You know, what keeps Sundras going? He's making a difference. So make sure you've got such a big idea that you attract people like moth to a flame. And then get out the way. If you are rubbish with numbers, find someone who's good with numbers, because it's going to kill you. If you're rubbish with marketing, get out the way and find someone who's going to do it for next to nothing because they get your concept. If not, you need to find and make a plan to do it yourself. But always have in the mind, that's the next person I'm going to appoint. That's the next person I'm going to appoint.
Okay. And I see that a lot, that you have the scenario that Michael Gerber talked about. The employee catches the enterprise, the entrepreneurship bug, right? Saying, you know what? In this company, I'm the one who's making money for the boss, right? Therefore, I'm going to do it myself. So then they start on their own because they were the ones like baking the bread, and because the bakery owner is not doing that, feeling like, I could do it myself. Then they go ahead and do that and realize that, okay, that is a technician job. You are a technician, you're not a manager, you're not a business owner. And then realizing that, okay, maybe my boss was actually doing something that I don't know. And then now you've moved from what you thought was a bad boss to an even worse boss yourself, right? And now you've run out of all the time, all the money, and the dream of, I'll decide my own time, like you can't do that anymore. And deciding your own money, you can't do that anymore. And you're struggling with that because the mindset hasn't shifted. Can you tell us about that transition now when you now decide that, okay, I have this is what I want to be, and recognizing the different people that you need in your business? What would be some of the practical ways now of giving them the job description if it was you? I know I asked that question earlier, but if it was one person just trying to move us into either systems or other people?
I think the first thing is to understand yourself. So it doesn't matter how big an organization is. I always try and get the CEO, MD, founder to do some kind of, like the test we did with you, that changed your life. It changed my life. Thinking about doing some kind of profiling, second personality profiling test to find out what direction should you be going in. Are you a people person? Are you a data person? If you're a people person, then you probably may well be able to push the sales part. If you're a numbers person, then you're not. You're going to really battle. And again, apply that knowledge and understanding of yourself to work out where you fit on the organogram. But then the next piece is to understand, what are your values? What do you hold true? What do you want to give to this world, the universe? But it's simple stuff. So where do I spend my money? Where do I spend my time? Where do I spend my attention? Because again, if you're doing that as part of your role, then you will have energy. You will have the impetus to keep going. So I love gadgets. I love new things. I love technology. So in a business where I was doing that, I had all the energy in the world. As soon as I got to FinSwitch, where I was now manager, and all I did was sit and wait for the system to fail, because then the whole industry ground to a halt, was a horrible space to be, because there was nothing new happening. There was no new technology happening, or very little. There was no new projects happening. We were just nursing this thing to make sure it stayed alive and kept going. But that took me way too long to work out. The second time it happened at Sirdar, I was given the role of MD because we didn't have anyone else to do it. Within a year, I was looking for someone else because I didn't want that role. I knew I didn't want that role. Now I have no employees. I'm all by myself in a little cupboard in my house doing what I do in the Sirdar family because that's the position I created for myself. So it's really important to understand what are you naturally got energy to do, and then work out where that fits on the wheel. So for example, if you are, so I'm going to use the contribution compass profiling because they're the one I know best, but if you are high activating, you're going to be good at innovation, coming out with new product sets. If you're a champion like Sandras, you're going to be good at marketing and sales and driving an idea forward into the market. If you're a coach profile, you're going to be good with the people. So you're going to be good at leading the team. And if you go around the wheel, then I'm good at finance, I'm good at this, I'm good at the other. And then find the gap. So you want the next person to come in to be the opposite profile from you, not your mate, someone who thinks differently from you, who has different opinions on things, who sees things that you can't see. And then you add the third, and again, you look, where's the gap? We fill the third gap. So really, you're thinking as a team from day one.
And something that a lot of businesses in the earlier stages struggle with is that, because they're saying, I hate corporate.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not going to be corporate. I don't want to be corporate.
But then you want a big company, but you hate corporate.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not going to put any policies or procedures in place. I don't want to be corporate.
But with that, like, at a certain point, because you're moving from family to village to city to nation, at some point when you have a lot of people, you need to have procedures on how things get done. But if you haven't thought about that, how do you balance the point of writing those things and starting to have those and also getting work done? Because as entrepreneurs, we feel like that's wasting time. Let's move, right?
So simple, practical stuff. I'm doing everything. Day one, I'm doing everything. I know I'm doing everything. I'm doing marketing, I'm doing admin, I'm doing everything. Work out what you hate most. Work out how much an hour of your time is worth if you spent it somewhere else, and that's your budget. Now go and hire that person for 1,000 rand a month or 1,000 rand a week or whatever it is. Hire that person because it frees up your time. And then keep doing that. But if you put a process in place and you write down a procedure, it's much easier to hand over, and this dreaded word, delegate. Entrepreneurs need to delegate. You have to get over yourself and say, this person's going to do this, and they may not do it as well as I can, but if you've written it down in such a way that it's easy to follow, then they might do. And slowly but surely, you can let go and focus on what you're best at. So the business cycle is, a business runs out of your personal creativity, then you have this crisis of control because you don't want to let go of stuff. And then you have a crisis of communication because you've let go of the stuff, but you're not communicating very well. So people just don't know what they're doing half the time. They don't know what the strategy is. They don't know what the process is. And so it goes. So you're slowly, piece by piece, letting go of stuff. So start with the stuff you hate. It's much easier to let go of. Work that process, perfect that process, make sure that person can operate without you even having to speak to them for days or weeks on end. Cool, I've franchised that role. Now I can franchise the next one and the next one and the next one.
I see, and that's the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. I struggled with myself many times, where it's supposed to be delegation, but it end up being abdication. Yeah. So management by abdication. You find like, that's a brilliant person coming to my company. Oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? Here, all the things you should do. Bye. Right? And then you check on them after a week. They're going on another, like, nobody can do these things the way I would. Then you fire them and continue doing it yourself.
Yeah, nobody does it like I can do, so I'll take it back.
Because you didn't communicate, you didn't delegate, and you didn't guide. You just left it to them. I think that's like a big problem where people think because somebody is capable, I should just let them do their thing. Not knowing that they actually need to be trained on your company, on your values, what's important, the culture, and what you expect to happen on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, on your goals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, like the stuff we implemented where we had a weekly meeting, we went through, okay, these are the 5 priorities you think you have, and I went through list, and No, actually, can we swap those two around because that doesn't line up with my 5 priorities for this week? And then you have that quick, scrum or whatever it is you want to call it. We just wrote it on a piece of paper 15, 20 years ago, and it worked. So it's making sure that everyone knows what they need to do. Then they can take responsibility for doing what they need to do and get on with it. But if they don't have the skill, they don't have the training, they don't have the... Frankly, if they're in the wrong role, and again, that was our journey, was this guy is not an IT manager. He should be on stage presenting and doing other stuff.
Exactly.
They didn't fit
Yeah,
in an IT
the only program I wrote, like I did the computer science, the only program I wrote and finished was for the exam. I like talking to humans, not sitting alone like doing that. I can do Excel very well, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Give me people any day. But I also know people say, give me spreadsheets any day.
So lock him in an office where the only sight of the outside world is through a computer screen, and he's going to go nuts. Well,
Exactly.
he did go nuts.
Exactly. Now, tell us about expectations from the board. Now that the business is running, you've got a board, there are people here who've raised investment. What does the board expect? How do you keep the board abreast with what's happening? In other words, how do you manage all of that?
Sure. Well, like a minute, 30 seconds?
1 minute, 2 minutes? What should they do?
So the board is about strategy, leadership, and governance. So you need to make sure the people in that room, A, understand that they are now this selfless entity called a board that is only doing what's in the best interest of the business, not the best interest of them as a shareholder, them as an employee, them as anything else. You're only thinking about the business. And that's typically a very difficult one for most boards to grasp. Then you need to think about, are we leading? So have we defined what this business is all about? Have we defined the strategy? Are we talking about the strategy? Are we living the strategy? Are we presenting the strategy in a way which people in the rest of the organization can understand? And that could just be you on your own, or it could be more than one person. Then you need to understand, well, what is the culture of this board? What is the culture of the organization? Are they in alignment? Are we living that culture? How many stories are on the newspaper where the boards are doing something completely different from the stated culture and values of the organization? Or is the leadership leading the organization in completely the wrong direction because there's a total disconnect? So get those right at the beginning. Write it down. Right? This is our code of honor for this group. Again, do it early, and it could be simple. It could be half a page, but write it down. So everybody can be held accountable against that stuff. So you're building a team of equals. You're building a team that are all different. So we don't want multiple people who think the same. We want everyone to be thinking in a different way if possible. And then we need to be operating and understand that we are in a leadership role and we are driving and we own strategy. Then you put the governance bit, the policies and procedures in place to help and support the MD to deliver. So have we got a policy for this? Think about it once, write it down, implement it. Everyone in the organization now knows, okay, we get 15 days leave and we get 30 days sick leave every 6 months, every 3 years, and this is what happens. The MD doesn't have to tell them every week how it works. And then you just move through what's the next one we're getting lots of conversations about. What's the next one? What's the next one? Next one. As a leader, they come at you all the time until you actually stand and go, okay, I made a different decision for that person and a different decision for that person. I need to actually write it down and get it done. Mm. So you almost can't help having some kind of policy and procedure, because that's the way you hand over control to the MD and to the rest of the organization. So the board is there to guide, to support, hold the MD accountable for the performance of the organization. It's that hourglass, organization below, board above.
And then reporting to the shareholders. What's the most important thing you should communicate, and what's the cadence for that? It's recommended.
So if you put money into a business, what do you want to know?
Are we making money or are we losing money?
There you go. So you're reporting back to the shareholders, what have I got? I've got a strategy, I've got a budget, this is what it looks like, does it make sense? Yes. And hopefully you've got some sense from the shareholders as to what their requirements are, what their intent is, why did they invest in the first place. So have they told you I want you to double the value of this business over the next 6 months, 6 years, whatever it is. I want a dividend of X, Y, Z, 5%, 10% over X, Y. Have they told you that? Have you written it down? Because then that's you're reporting back against what they have told you they want. And again, because we never sit with our shareholder hat on, we never do the work and do the stuff.
With your business, because you're putting in time and money, it doesn't feel like you should actually treat yourself separately, like as a shareholder, and look at it differently. See that, is it performing the way, if I just wasn't working in it and I invested, would I be happy with this performance?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And then there's also anxiety that comes with reporting. Like, I'm going to meet my shareholders, and people get anxious. How would you advise founders to think, how should they think about that opportunity when they're actually talking to shareholders and they're talking about performance?
Yeah, when you mentioned how often should you report back to shareholders, to get the shareholders at FinSwitch out of my face, as it were, because we only had meetings twice a year, was to give them a monthly report. Now that's excessive, I think, because it's a lot of work, but it kept them happy. So that when we had the board meeting, we could get real business decisions made, and we could think about strategy, because the operational stuff had been reported in a way that it made sense. But a shareholder still is just really trying to find out, again, is the business growing? Is it doing well? Is it being well run? So if you give them a reasonable amount of detail about what are the wins for the last 6 months, if you're doing reporting twice a year, you need by law to report at least once a year. But if you're going to, if the shareholders say, look, I need to trust that you're doing the right thing. I need to be reported monthly, bi-monthly, every quarter. That's what I feel comfortable with. Then go with that. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule other than you need to have an annual general meeting once a year, because you need to appoint an auditor if you've got to that size. You need to reappoint the directors if you've got them, etc. You need to go through that particular list.
And I know you talked about them at different points, but what would be the 3 business growth blockers? Like, how should founders look at their business, or what should they absolutely not do in order for their business to grow?
Look, the big one is make a decision about craft versus enterprise, because you're going to really, really struggle if you go off in the craft direction, because you have to unwind it to go the other way, because people you've employed are the wrong people. You haven't built the structure in such a way that people are responsible for what they should be. So it's really difficult to unwind it. And we come up with a lot of companies who have been going down that craft route for 20, 30 years. Now they want to sell the business. And they're told, no, you need to fix this. Take the next 3 to 5 years to fix it. So make that decision. Get over yourself. Make a decision. If this business is not all about me, this is where I'm going to go. If it is, then go that way. And then just understand how business is formed. Because again, if you don't understand how I should be reporting to a shareholder, what a shareholder wants, what a director is supposed to be doing, then as soon as it gets bigger, you start falling over. And you get shareholder arguments all the time, because they think, no, but my salary and I need involvement in the strategy. No, you're a shareholder. You don't have involvement in strategy. You set a direction and a purpose, but you can't get involved in operations, because it's confusing for the organization. Who is my boss? Who do I report to? Who's setting the direction? Who's telling me where we're going to go? So it's go which direction, understand just the basics about how a business is built, so you don't do anything daft, and then make sure that you just follow a plan and get some help. Read a book. There's plenty of books out there. Read a book, do a course, and as you get more money, put that 10% aside. All the gurus all over the world talk about it all the time, and it's absolutely valid. Absolutely valid. If there's not a period in your life where you're putting at least 10% of whatever you earn into growing, then you're not going to get to where you need to be. So get advice, get help. As soon as you get stuck, ask someone. And online, wow, we didn't even have the internet in 1995. Come on, you guys are so lucky. You just Google it. So get the advice, look it up, get multiple versions, because there's so much rubbish. You have too much information. but make the effort. Put the time aside and learn how to do the next thing.
Brilliant. You can get to Pranary. We just bring amazing people to guide you. The people that I would have never met 10 years ago, like, because we didn't have either the technology or access or any of that you're talking about. Cool.
Yeah, and these online webinars with some of the best people in the world are just there.
Yeah. And what other things then should founders think about that would help them to grow? In terms of, you mentioned ego as well, like getting over your ego.
Yeah, one thing I haven't mentioned is you need a massive idea. I was talking to someone last week who was talking to funders, and they said, look, actually, you haven't got a big enough idea. We can only put in 50 million. Your plan's not big enough. You've only got a 5 million plan. Come back to us when you've got a bigger plan. So you need a massive idea. So that comes to that, like a promise. Make sure the promise you're making to the market is so much bigger than you. And then you pick at it and you pick pieces of it. Okay, well, is that globally relevant? Yes. Obviously, I'm not going to go global on day one. Which region am I going to start and pick that and then grow from there? But the concept needs to be way bigger than you think you can dream of, because it needs space to grow into. Absolutely.
We get that a lot, and within the session we had today and yesterday at Pranary with the Ignition and Startup Launch Program, it was that. Like, that's the feedback that we get from the investors all the time, because we're sitting with, just with us, the 15 VCs and angels, and they're not investing. They're saying, we're still looking for somebody to invest in, and a lot of times say, this is so small, and that's the feedback that you get from Ariel and from Simon. Like, this market is too small. Think bigger. And investors like bees, like billions. Like, if the total addressable market, we know you can't get that, but it just shows that, okay, it's a big enough market, as opposed to only do wetsuits for left-handed black people in Western Cape. Hey, how many black people swim, right? And then the market is really small. Or ski. Okay, that one guy. So you can have a market that's too small. Could you think a little bigger? And the money that they want to put in, they want it to really go and make a bigger difference, as opposed to a little here and then put it into so many companies. One of the things that actually I experienced was, I was in Ghana in 2016, and I met Tim Draper. He's a billionaire, he's an investor in like Hotmail and Tesla, Skype, all of that. And when I had conversation with him, said, like, the money that we're looking for, a lot of companies here in Africa, is too small. And so that, at first, it was, like, yeah, it's too small, because you think about it this way, that somebody has got $1 billion they need to invest, right? And then say, oh, I'm looking for 10,000. Like, ish. Like, I can't handle a lot of these. And then also, or they got maybe 10 million. But then if you're asking, like, I want 10,000 or 50,000, the amount of due diligence that they have to go through is almost the same for when you're raising $1 million. So for them, it's like, at this price point, not worth looking at. So for all the entrepreneurs, there's actually a different type of money problem. There's a lot of money that's looking for investments. Great. And what advice would you have for the entrepreneurs? Then we'll take questions from the audience. Okay. What advice would you have in terms of thinking about governance? I know a lot of entrepreneurs don't actually like governance. It's like insurance, legal, all the things like, oh,
grudge purchase.
Do you have to do that? Grudge purchases. Tell us about how to think about governance.
So a friend of mine runs an incubator, and he's also a biotech investor. And he said his biggest problems that the companies he sees aren't investable. So I said, well, what does that mean? He says, because they have no process around the way they make decisions. So I can't see how you've made decisions up to this point, which means I've got very little confidence in how you're going to make decisions going forward. So have a meeting even if it is only twice a year, and write down the big decisions you've made and sign it. Because a bank's going to look for that, an investor's going to look for that. And actually it's just a good thing to do because it forces you to think, was that actually a good decision? Did we really think this through? What were the options that we considered at that point in time? We only had one option. Was that so clever? Should we have gone for 3? Yes, okay, we had 3. But that one we just sucked out of our thumb. That one was because my wife said it sounded like a good idea. This one was because my brother happened to have been in the business, had done something similar that was nothing like our business, etc. That stuff happens. And we make a decision around the braai, and then we actually forgot what the details were and what the action points were and all the rest of it. So if you can show at least some maturity in terms of the way you're running the business and you're making decisions in the business, you become instantly more investable because I've got some concept of how this thing works. You're transparent in the way you're running this thing. Same for salaries. Yeah, in small businesses, we put this money aside and there, but at least have an item somewhere on there that says you're paying yourself a salary. So I know that if I can find someone better than doing the job than you, at least I know what I've got to replace and what I've got, funds I've got in the business, and the number in the business that I can replace. So governance is just doing the bare minimum of a system that works, that adds value, that makes a difference, that's not corporate. It's actually just common sense. And that's where we get stuck. We think it's not going to help. It absolutely adds value.
Fantastic. Thanks. A big hand for Tim, please. We're going to take questions. Anybody with questions for Tim?
Deathly silence.
Very clear, or everybody slept, right? And then the questions start, and then they continue.
This may be difficult to answer, but what stage should a startup consider? Okay. Thank you. Hi. Thanks for all the tips. Those were great. Question around startups. At what stage should they consider creating a board for themselves? Is it number of employees? Is it traction?
It's if you can find good people that are cheap is usually the best decision. Look, at the beginning, it's very much a mentorship process. And there's so many people out there, there's at least 3 of us in this room that are doing this stuff for a lot less than we would earn doing something else. And we've got nearly 2,000 people on a database of people who want to be directors. And a lot of them would potentially do it for free because it's fun, it's interesting, it's exciting, giving back, sharing all the knowledge I've built up over the last 30, 40 years, all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't necessarily have to cost anything, but you need to find someone who buys into your strategy, who buys into your values, and isn't just doing it to take over your business. And that's the tricky part often. You get someone who knows a lot, and they just drag you off in the wrong direction. So you've got to be really clear on where you want to go, and again, it helps if you've written some of that stuff down. To say, this is the rules we're playing by. Are you okay with these rules? This is the way we're doing this stuff. Yes, okay, cool. And it doesn't necessarily need to even include equity. That's the other thing. Don't offer equity unless you have to. Equity is seriously expensive. Offer equity when it's going to add massive leverage and massive growth opportunities. Absolutely. But as a director, it actually clouds your thinking if you are a shareholder. If you get a little tea money and travel money and stuff to keep you involved, that's fine. But shareholding in the distance can often be the wrong motivator. And having experienced it of being on boards, or the Sirdar board, initially I wasn't a director of Sirdar, but I was a shareholder. That felt so liberating because I just had to monitor the reports and give my business partner a clap if we weren't making any money. And I got a salary. But as soon as I became a director, now we want to keep the business going, and do we want to do that because it'll keep the shareholder happy? And then am I thinking about this with my shareholder hat on, and I don't want to put the cash in this week, and I'm really not sure we can get the money somewhere else? all of that stuff, and you're a manager as well, it just makes it so much more difficult to manage. So if you've got someone in the business who's only a director, that's it. It's their only reason for being in the meeting. It forces you to have a director conversation, which is, what's the strategy? What is the plan for the next month, 3 months, 6 months? And then mentor you, help you, share their knowledge, and move you forward. And all of the small businesses I've worked with, that's typically made a big difference. And as I said, there's may not be any equity in it. The person hasn't gone in thinking they're going to sell you consulting time at some point. They've gone into it because they really believe in what you're trying to do. They believe that this thing's got legs, and they want to help. And there's a surprising number of people out there who will do that.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm trying to teach my kids that it's okay to make mistakes. It's a good thing to make mistakes. So I'd like to ask you, what's the biggest mistake that you've made, and what have you learned from it?
Well, the video shot was pretty high up there. On a monetary terms, on a stress perspective, I think going through a shareholder dispute, and which ended up in the business liquidation, it was a horrible learning curve. And looking back on it, my mistake was I probably should never have done it, but then it would have been a mistake if I hadn't done it, because I learned so much in that year and a half about all of the really, really bad stuff people do to each other and how destructive the legal system can be, that I've then been able to apply that knowledge in every other business I've spoken to. In fact, I was on the conversation with someone yesterday who'd been told by the lawyer I'd recommended to him a year ago he should have liquidated a year ago, and now he's going liquidating now. Do it early. Whatever it is, do it earlier than you think, because it's that invested cost, and I've spent so much money doing this, spent so much doing that. So yeah, the video shot was, I've got it, I've put a whole bunch of money in, I'm sure I can turn it around, I've got a manager in. Then he died. So then I closed it down. But yeah, do it. If you see the problem, push as hard as you can to fix the problem. But if it's just not going to work, then get out. So that's the common learning where I haven't got out. I haven't confronted the problem quickly enough. So I've lost money in investments, I've lost money in business, I've lost relationships because I didn't deal with it early enough. That's the only consistent thing I can think of over the last 30, 40 years. So we're trying to teach my son, if it's really bad, just tell us. And he's told us some really bad stuff since. You're really bad stuff. Ooh. But he told us, so we can deal with it.
So for me, I think some of the biggest mistakes was, your biggest mistake was hiring me. Okay, maybe, no.
No, that other dude I hired just after you.
Yes.
That was a whole different ballgame.
Yes, I remember that guy.
I went through therapy over him.
Right, so for me, one of my big mistakes was actually not listening to Tim. So the people like Simon and Tim, like, who are in investment, would tell you that, for instance, like what the finance minister here said, that you can draw out your pension, or part of your pension.
No.
Don't do it. Right? So I worked for FinSwitch, and they were putting money away in I think RA or some of those.
No, we had an umbrella fund.
Yes.
Because we were part of Coronation. That was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
5 employees, we got straight into the Coronation's umbrella fund, which meant we got amazing benefits because they got hundreds of employees.
Exactly. And at that time, I said, do you want to cash out? Do you want to take your money out? And as a brilliant entrepreneur, what do you think I thought? Take the money. I don't know where that money went. I was still thinking like, I should have listened to Tim. So when you have money in savings, don't touch it. Believe me, you always think you do better with the money than you actually do. And as entrepreneurs, we're always optimistic. This time it will work. This time it will work. We took like all our savings, We bought shares in a company called Sun Air. It was supposed to be an airline. It never took off, literally. And we lost all our money. That was like all our savings, everything. And so the first time going to, like this other man who told me about it, then we went to, he says, let's go and sue them. We went into court, first time in court, like, high court, and the guys have got an advocate. Those guys that charge like 20,000 rand an hour or something. And we are alone, we're gonna represent ourselves. What are the chances? Right? Yeah, it was bad. So yeah, so it's a lot of those, like, and this is the feedback to all your entrepreneurs. Even when you believe, a lot of people quote like, oh, Elon Musk put everything in. Okay, that's why we hear about it. It's very rare. It's an exception. A lot of people just lose their money. So don't bet everything.
Yeah, I mean, you hear the high-profile people who've literally been on the edge. Branson's done it at least once. Musk did it. They had virtually nothing left, and they broke through. How many of those people are there on the planet? Well, it's like winning the lottery. Not very many. And they are exceptional individuals who actually knew what was going to happen next and had planned for the next thing. It just needed to happen, and it did. And if it hadn't, they would have been completely bankrupt. Build the foundation. That spreadsheet we did was just brilliant. So like, put a month's salary in savings account, then put the next month's salary in something else, and the next month's salary worth in something else. So now you've got 3 months that you can access if you need to, but it's not in your current account. And then the next one goes into shares and bonds and whatever else, and you build it out. But as an entrepreneur, don't touch that.
Don't put it all in crypto. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, team.
Pleasure.
I think it's been super helpful. Thank you. And thank you again for everybody that came through today.